two young Negroes, a high school student named James Green and a college student named Philip Gibbs, were shot to death early today by police, who fired into a crowd in front of a women's dormitory at Jackson State College in Jackson, Mississippi. 15 others were wounded.
Part of the protest that night was about Cambodia, but it wasn't really just one thing. We were struggling with political issues in the Deep South, but we had no idea that it was going to get escalated to the point they would have to call in state troopers and city police.
A crowd of students had gathered in front of the girls' dormitory, which is now riddled with bullet holes.
I saw one man in the crowd of troopers raise a bullhorn. Now, he raised the bullhorn, but he said absolutely nothing. A split second later, he started firing. Bullets were flying all over my head. People behind me were bleeding and falling. The city police, the highway patrol, the state troopers, none of these people offered to give any aid to this dying man.
To think that 30 or 40 law enforcement officers armed with rifles and shotguns would walk up the street on a college campus a couple hundred yards and open fire on a bunch of kids.
Young people started to turn away from the fight. Effectively, it was total demoralization.
Word got around. After Kent State and at Jackson State, I think there was a national concern about how far can we take legitimate dissent without worrying about one losing one's life.
Here in New York today, there was a massive display of American flags, as more than 100,000 marchers rallied to show support for the administration.
Probably not since the Second World War, or maybe even the First World War, has New York City seen an outburst of patriotic fervor that can match this one.
I think after Kent State, that terrible event, you wondered if it was all coming up unstuck. Within the real Americans, most of them probably Democrats in New York, were marching in support of the war, were standing up for the values and convictions of Richard Nixon. It was a formative moment for America's new majority.
The generational anger that Vietnam created was a spontaneous roundup anger. But the Nixon administration exploited it.
We're here as Americans. We're here, even though we disagree with many things that may be said by others, we're here to try to work with them for the future of our country.
What I can tell you for sure was that Nixon appreciated the political fallout of Kent State, because that really became the lever he used to bring white, blue-collar, patriotic Americans into the Republican Party.
We're the fellows who build this country. We're the fellows who build the hospitals when they need them and they're sick. We build the bridges and tunnels for them to get around in. We build the schools that they want to burn down. And we also build all of the other things in this country.
So what you had to do is watch the Democratic Party, these fissures open up, and drive a wedge through them and take the portions of the Democratic Party which were compatible with Nixon.
By speaking to their patriotism, by speaking to their rage at people who were cutting against the grain of traditional American values.
And attach them to the Republican Party on a permanent basis. And that's how Nixon created that new majority.
Okay, I don't know, it's been a long time since I sent you